Hi, everybody. It's Joe Cioffi here. It's a Saturday night. I just want to start off by saying those of you who may be on my Facebook page probably already know that my dog passed away today. Cody was time. We have had a tough couple of months with him, but particularly the last week or so, it finally got to a point where he basically told me that it was time to go. And it was a difficult day, but he's in a much better place. And those of you who left comments on my Facebook page, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Kovu, for those of you who might want to know what he's up to, he's around here somewhere. I heard him jump off something. Hopefully he won't be going into the cabinets anytime soon. But no matter. We're going to proceed with the weather, which is actually, it's turned quite interesting. You know, one of the things that I've noticed over the years, at least for my neck of the woods, is when the weather models show nothing for 16 days, it's pretty much a good bet that that will not be the case. And indeed, over the last 24, 36 hours, models have evolved. We've been dealing with this blocking pattern, and that continues, and it's actually going to change somewhat. There's going to be, the blocking signature is going to continue, but it is going to change in the long range. The European and the GFS both show this, and I'm going to illustrate for you what is going on, and then we'll talk about it in the practical sense of what this all means going forward. It does not mean, by the way, a snowstorm that's imminent, okay? It may eventually down the road start to turn colder, but we still have work to do. This process actually, in my opinion, really began back at the end of October when we had that storm move up the East Coast. I think it set the ball in motion for the blocking signature to develop. And now we're going to be looking toward next weekend for a possible development of a storm along the East Coast that may set the second round of development of evolution here as far as the block is concerned. So let's take a look at what is happening at the moment with respect to the block. I mean, we're just going to go just into the future by a day or so. I'm going to pull up the GFS for tomorrow afternoon, which is close enough to real time, so you can we'll give you a good idea here as to what's happening, what the structure is. Now, the block is east-based. In other words, it's favoring northern and eastern Greenland and back over toward Europe, and this is causing cold air to be drawn down into Europe, which we will look at. Very interesting what may be happening there in the next 10 days or so. But you can see what happens with this east block. You've got this underneath it, this fast flow across the United States with weather systems just moving through. We have a trough here in the eastern part of the U.S. that's moving through now and will be lifting up and out. And that's going to basically be replaced by a flat westerly flow for a good part of the week. But there is going to be energy that's going to be able to break through all this and move to the East Coast later next week. And when we pull up the GFS for next weekend, this is for next Saturday, I believe, or what did I do? Yes, this is actually for early Saturday morning of next week. And we'll bring it up to the top here, and you can see what happens here. The block starts to change. Pressures actually start to rise in the northwest Atlantic. The east-based strong block that's up closer to the polar regions actually weakens somewhat. But with pressures that are rising more in the northwest Atlantic, this is going to force a trough to dive and possibly cut off along the east coast. And you start to get a bit of what looks like a log jam that develops out in the Atlantic. So that's going to be important to watch and see. But the bottom line is, with this change that the models are showing, both the European and the GFS show this, you're going to see the block actually shift southwestward from where it is now. And when we jump to day 10 on the GFS, and of course this assumes, by the way, that the models continue on this trend. It's done it for several runs in a row now. So and the European has the same idea, just maybe gets there in a bit of a different sort of way, but it does have the same concept. But as we move to day 10 here, you can see now where a new blocking high has formed in northeastern Canada, and you have a fairly deep trough that runs from central Canada into the southeastern coast, into the southeast of, coast of the United States. Low pressure that's locked up out at 40 and 60, and the jet is way displaced to the south. Now, we are in the early part of December, so the cold air is cold relative to normal. It is not cold, perhaps, relative to the depth of winter. When we're talking mid-January to February cold, we're not there yet, but it is showing certainly a trend that would, in the longer term, lead to below normal temperatures. But we got to get this first weather system to do its job, and then watch to see if the block reforms as strongly as the models are showing this is now December 5th. So it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some work, and it is a process, but eventually we may get there. So this is something that we're going to be paying attention to as we move into the longer term. So I'm going to bring up the GFS now. We're going to take a look at this and see what our friendly little model has done. I got to make it a little smaller for you. And no, got to get smaller still. That's better. And bring that up to the top and put everything else behind. And we will begin the interactive process. Okay, and hang on, you guys in the chat room, because we'll be talking. So we had this cold front come through in the east. It's weak, and then that goes out. There's actually a little secondary front that's indicated here. It's very, very weak. That kind of falls apart as it arrives on Monday, and gradually it's high pressure and milder temperatures Tuesday into Wednesday. Another weak front goes by on Wednesday. Another high builds to the north. Now here comes the next system coming into the Midwest and through the Mississippi Valley. This we start to see low pressure develop in eastern Michigan with a long trailing front down into northern Florida. And if you notice, the isobars are stretched out. So there's probably another low that starts out in western North Carolina. That eventually is going to become the primary low along the coast, and you can see it here as it spins away next weekend and into the first part of next week. That is going to be, I think, the catalyst for what may happen here in the longer term. Also notice, by the way, that much of the precipitation with this, let me make sure I have the right, I have the rain and the frozen one up. You're going to see that much of the precipitation with this is going to be next weekend, is going to be in the form of rain. There is some snow being shown in the West Virginia mountains and in eastern Ohio and perhaps southwestern Pennsylvania, but there really isn't that much cold air. And look at through New England, it rains all the way up into northern Maine. So we really need to get, you're going to really need to get this storm to get the ball rolling, and then the block to reform up into the Northwest Atlantic in order for you to start to get that colder air back into the United States. Now, it eventually does that. It takes some time, but it does that as we go late in the period. You start to see colder air gradually overtaking the eastern part of the U.S., and it's probably going to be at this point that you may start to see some chances for some snow. But none of this is guaranteed, obviously, but we are going to monitor it closely. It's going to be very interesting to watch all this. Why don't we take a look at what's happening in Europe, because that's also quite interesting. Let me find that map of Europe. So with the east-based block, we're basically getting colder air that's coming in from the north, from north of Greenland, from the Arctic, and then driving southward into the British Isles and into Western Europe as we move through time. And you can see here there are some patches of snow that pop up. It's hard to read the GFS. Sometimes I still have to figure out when it's got its snow map, and then you see, on the preset map, it doesn't really look all that impressive. One of the things that this particular model run did do is it shows snow getting pretty far to the south here into Italy, even into southern Italy. I was looking at one of the snowfall maps from earlier. It was actually showing accumulating snow in the mountains of Sicily, no less. Some snows into France and into northern Spain. You get, again, with that east-based block, you're going to get waves of cold air coming down from the north. And certainly there'll be some chances for precipitation here. When we look at put the snowfall map up for the next 10 days, and you can see how extensive the GFS is indicating. Now, I guess a lot of this is going to be elevation driven. And you can, most of eastern France, under quite a bit of snow, even into northernmost Spain. Look at the snow that extends down through much of Italy, right down to the boot heel, even into Sicily, showing some snowfall there. And of course, over the eastern half of England, Northern Ireland, snow in Scotland. Saw some videos from northern Scotland showing some places have gotten quite a bit of snow lately in the highlands there. And of course, a lot of snow as you go into Eastern Europe, the GFS generating some big amounts. So this does look like a fairly serious blast of cold air that's coming down. I'll put the above and below normal temperatures for you. You see that the effect that an eastern-based block has as we go through time, moving into late next week, you start to get these waves of below normal temperatures. During the middle and latter part of next week, you see these waves of below normal temperatures that come down from the north. That's that cold air that's coming down on the easternmost side of that blocking high. So a lot of Western Europe showing much below normal temperatures after, say, the middle part of next week, right through the end of the forecast period. As we're now at day 10, we start to see a little bit of a change around day 11 and day 12, so and out to day 16. So basically, let me just run this back one more time. So here we are. This is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So starting from Monday of this week, all of this week, and a good chunk of next week, temperatures are going to be running below normal before things start to warm up in Europe a little bit as that block begins to shift into the eastern part of the United States. So we'll go back home now and see what the impact is with us. Now, remember, we are in the time of year. Just set this up, but you can see for this week anyway, we get this. It's getting stuck a little bit. Just having a little bit of time with these maps loading up. All right, so now we're into Tuesday, so much of the nation is above average. We get that little shot for Thursday. Then going into next weekend with that low that develops offshore, you can see how above normal it is up in northern New England. We still haven't gotten the colder air yet. It's going to take time. It's really after day 10 you start to see that the below normal temperatures that begin to show up in the plains, and that gradually spreads into the eastern part of the United States by the end of the period. Snowfall, by the way, during this time frame, during the next 10 days, if we look at the GFS model, total snowfall, again, it's up in the central and northern Rockies and into the Intermountain West. Not too much along the plains and into the Great Lakes. A little bit of action in the Northeast. Some of that may be elevation driven with whatever forms next weekend. But again, the most important part of that particular system for next week is going to be the fact that it is going to start the process of rearranging the deck chairs here on the ship, moving the block around to a position where it's going to start favoring colder air into the eastern part of the U.S. These things never happen on a dime, folks. They take time. It's always a process. It's almost never a singular event that does it. Even if it is a singular event, you see the seeds for it are always set up a couple of weeks before, and then you just kind of watch it go in motion in terms of what you can ultimately expect. So let me just say a quick hi to everybody that's on board tonight. Welcome to my YouTube live cast. Appreciate all of you being here. I'm going to just run through some of your questions, and I appreciate the kind words of sympathy, by the way. Thank you. If you joined late, I lost my dog today. We had to have him put down. He's just been, he was blind and deaf and also had dementia. He really just did not know anymore, except for some brief lucid moments, which he had last night and again today. Except for some brief moments, a lot of the times he didn't even realize where he was. So, but it was time. And thank you again. I feel very good. Let me tell you a real quick story of what happened today. And my daughter was there, so she was a witness to all this. And I'm thinking that he was sending me a little bit of a message. But after he had the doctor did what he had to do. For those of you who have gone through this, this is nothing new. If you don't have a dog, if you've never had to put an animal down, it's a very peaceful way for them to go. He had been dead for several minutes, no brain activity, no heart activity. But a lot of times what happens is that the muscles continue to do things, and they contract and expand, and parts of the body were twitching. And my dog was a dog that, when he was up until a couple of years ago, was a very, very happy dog, always wagging his tail. That was a big thing with him. Everything made him happy. He was always wagging his tail. Well, he had been dead for several minutes. My daughter and we sat for a little while with him, and we're seeing things twitch here and there. And then out of nowhere, his tail started wagging. And I don't mean just a wag like this. It went like this. And I think that I really believe that he was sending me a message and telling me that he crossed the Rainbow Bridge and everything was great, and that he was happy again. So I take a lot of solace in that. Having seen that today made me feel very good that he's in a much better place. So thank you again. All right, so let me see if any of you have any questions tonight. If you are just back from your Thanksgiving, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Too early for snow in Norfolk, Virginia. Weather and LO 78. Let's see. The pattern could lead Bob Apple, or Appel. This pattern could lead to a chance for a white Christmas for west of the mountains. Ocean also warm for snow in the big cities. Storms look warm along the coast. Then cold air blasts in afterward. Well, I hope you have it all figured out. Okay. That's kind of like it usually happens. Doesn't always happen that way. But why don't we wait and see how it all evolves in the next couple of weeks? But definitely out in the west is, with all the snow they already have on the ground, it seems to me like that's not going to be going away. Thanks, Chris Alley. Really appreciate it. I hope you're feeling much better. I know you were dealing with the flu and I'm hoping you're up and around and back to your old normal happy self. Let's see. I hope the model chatter of coastal storms is a sign of a developing pattern. Just need the cold air. Cullen, I think the timing of this now, I think, is very important because, my usual observation is that the wintertime pattern likes to lock in sometimes from mid-December to early January, or at least the signature of what the winter's going to be like. It may not, maybe the pattern flips around a bit, but in terms of how weather events evolve and what kind of tracks they take, things don't happen exactly the same way every time. But history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. And to see this happening, to see this pattern developing during the next several weeks, I think is going to be very important, because we may hold on to that or some semblance of that pattern going into the month of January. So we will be keeping a very close eye on all of this as things happen. Let's see. Any other weather questions tonight? Your words are all great. Thank you so much. I appreciate all your kind thoughts very much. And any shots at record highs? The media was talking about the possibility of 1 or 2 days for record high temperatures. Raymond, I don't know what the records are up by you. I know by me they probably won't be record highs here. Certainly should be into the 50s, but I don't know if that's not close to any kind of records here for the month of December, especially given the fact that a couple of Decembers ago we were hitting 70-degree readings up at Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So I'm going to say probably not for me. I don't know what your records are up in upstate New York. Perhaps for you guys it might be closer, but for me I don't think so. Do I think Texas will see colder air soon? You guys have been so bone dry in East Texas. You went from the floods of Harvey to nothing. I mean, it looks bone dry for a good chunk of this week. Now, whether some of that colder air, if this the whole overall jet stream pattern displaces pretty far to the south, I would tend to think that you will see some colder air. But we got to get this East Coast thing done next weekend into early next week, because that really is the catalyst for all of this. Ryan Ford, you're looking too far ahead to the second week of December. Let's get through the last week of November and the first few days of December. We'll work on what happens next weekend first, and then we'll see how it sets the table for anything else down the road. James Hawes in Philly, do I foresee a cold, snowy winter or warm and wet? There are other possibilities. It doesn't have to be either cold and snowy or warm and wet. It could be warm and snowy. It could be cold and wet with very little snow. It could be cold and dry. It could be warm and dry. I don't think it'll be warm and dry. I think you're going to see your temp. My guess is, and I don't think this is any monumental thing I'm about to say. Just from the standpoint of the last 2 winters, I've been arguing the fact that just from that alone, that we're going to be seeing a normalization. So perhaps this winter will be one that will be closer to average for most of the eastern part of the United States. Whether that leads to more snow or less snow depends on a whole bunch of other factors. So let's wait and see. That's why I like to take these things, a week or so at a time, rather than focusing on 2 or 3 months from now, because I frankly have no idea, and nobody does. So why don't we just kind of wait and see how these next few weeks play out? That might give us a bigger clue. I certainly don't have any real clue about what's happening. Although, the NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, has been negative for much of this month of November. We haven't seen that in quite a long time. So that might be something that might want to repeat itself as we go through the winter. Will it start getting colder in late December like last year? I would imagine it would. It'll probably, if the models are correct, it'll probably turn colder a little sooner than that. And yes, Deutschland. I always like to try to pronounce these things. Einig Vaterland. Weather changes every day. It certainly does for the most part. That is correct, and it changes every day on almost every place on Earth except San Diego. All right, folks. Long day for me, long holiday weekend. I hope everything's turned out okay on your end, and maybe Kovu might make an appearance tomorrow when we do our video. Actually, no, because I'm working tomorrow, so I'll be doing my video from there. So you won't see Kovu tomorrow, so maybe you'll see him Monday morning. All right. Website posts are up. You can check more about this on meteorologistjoecioffi.com. And by the way, if you look on the banner on my channel page in the lower right-hand corner, you should see links there to my Facebook page, Twitter, Google+, and my website. So you can easily link to all those things from there. And you may also see some cards up that will take you to some links as well, including the Joe Stradamus store. So if you want to get a mug or a T-shirt or whatever it is, if you're a weather geek or if you've got a weather geek that you're shopping for, you might want to give that a look. No one's under any obligation. I just put it out there. So if you'd like to take a look at it, you can link to that from my website or from my Facebook page as well. Okay, folks, have a great evening. We will talk to you on Sunday.